We're all very grateful that you can be here with us this evening for, I think, what will be a very interesting and important meeting. So I'd like to first call the meeting to order and request a roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff.
Here.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Here.
Mr. Darrow.
Here.
Vice President McClellan.
Here.
President Kohler.
I'm here also. Would you please all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first order of business is to approve the board minutes from January 7th, and there were actually two meetings. The first was the organization meeting, and the second was the regular meeting. Board members have had these minutes and have had the opportunity to review them. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Darrow.
Yes.
Vice President McClellan.
Yes.
President Kohler.
Yes. The next item of business is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, thank you, President Kohler. I do have a correction and a change this evening. On the first page, Ms. Kalinowski has shared that the order of the search proposal presentations will be flipped, and Ray and Associates will be presenting first. And then as you turn to page 2, at the end of the page, you'll see that we are recognizing completion of graduate credits, and there is a typo on the very last line for Mr. Woos. That should be from BA 22 Masters. And the salary number is correct.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes that Dr. Dominy outlined for us?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Darrow. In a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Kalinowski. Any further discussion? If not, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Darrow.
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Vice President McClellan.
Yes.
President Kohler.
Yes, that motion carries, and that moves us into communication to the board. Dr. Dominy.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure to start each meeting with recognition of our extraordinary staff and students. And this evening, we're going to begin with a recognition of our art award-winning students whose current artwork can be observed at the Haley Gallery here in New Albany. There's an exhibit of our student work, and tonight you're going to see a presentation of it via slideshow and hear from our art teacher, Ms. Montague. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. I just want to tell you that the Scholastic Art Awards are one of the oldest art competitions in the country. It is a national competition. This is the regional exhibition. Some very famous people have had the honor of being part of this when they were high school students. One of them you probably know is Andy Warhol, Robert Redford. So it is a very competitive competition. It's a really good real world thing for students to involve themselves with, where they see that, you know, they just enter their artwork. People, there's no rubric for the judges. It's just, what do they see? What do they, you know, feel that that skill level is there? There were over 1,400 entries. Only the top 25 were chosen overall. Out of that top 25, the top 10% were chosen for Silver Key Awards, and the top 5 for Gold Key. I think our students did an excellent showing in this really competitive competition. So, honorable mention, and I'll just have a few of the kids here this evening. Katie, raise your hand. Okay, this is a pretty large 18 by 24 inch colored pencil drawing. Lee, raise your hand. Another honorable mention, another colored pencil drawing. Julie Kim couldn't be here, but this is actually a digital quilt made from images from a trip to Italy that Julia took with me with several students last summer. Another student unfortunately can't be here, Cecilia, and this is also a colored pencil drawing. Silver Key, Chloe. There you go. And this is also another colored pencil drawing. This Silver Key was a self-portrait by this student, and this is pretty large, 36 by 36. And unfortunately, Julia couldn't be here this evening. Silver Key, Jordan, give a wave. I think she should have added lady. Another really, as you can see, these colored pencil drawings are pretty intricate. Go ahead. And this is also a colored pencil drawing, and unfortunately Harper could not be here. Kylie, this is actually a pretty involved printmaking process. It's called a reduction print. I won't go into the details, but it does take quite a bit of concentration to figure out how all these layers work together. The student unfortunately couldn't be here. This is an acrylic painting, and it was all about color harmony. And the gold key, persistence of memory. Unfortunately, Harper couldn't be here, and that is a pen and ink drawing. So congratulations, you guys, on a great job.
Wonderful.
It is an impossible act to follow, the work of our students, but I'd like to give you a quick update on several topics this evening as part of my report. First, I'd like to recognize the extraordinary career of one of our former principals, middle school principal Linda Martin, who passed away just a few days ago. If Mrs. Ramey is here, I'm going to invite her up to say a few words. She was our middle school principal until 2001 when she retired, and our current middle school library is named for Mrs. Martin.
I'm going to try to do this without shedding a tear, but it will be tough. When someone you love becomes a memory, that memory becomes a treasure. Please allow me to share with you some of the treasures about Linda. On Facebook, a former student shared, Linda Martin, the elementary principal, is the one who carried me with broken arms and a busted forehead to the ambulance and stayed with me the whole day since my parents were out of town. I can say without a doubt, she made my life and my parents' life better that day. From Jim Morgan, Linda Martin was my first mentor in the early 1980s, and my dear friend and colleague will be missed. From Valerie Bevelheimer, it is an honor to have worked with Linda. I learned from her, had fun with her, and even painted pumpkins for her when I taught art in her building. I will miss her warm sense of humor. John Dawson says, Linda Martin was one of a kind. I will never forget her sense of humor, her compassion, and the support she gave me when she was our NAMS principal. The important role she played in my life as a leader and a mentor cannot be measured. Jennifer and Jay Walker share, Jay and I are grateful to have known Linda and to have learned from her. She had such a great sense of humor, and we have so many fond memories of her. Linda was truly dedicated to her students, families, and teachers in New Albany, and she will be missed by many people. She taught many of us to be the teachers we are today. I myself had the honor of being hired by Linda 21 years ago, and it was because we had a mutual friend. That friend told me that if he couldn't hire me, he wanted me to be mentored by one of the best. I did not know what he meant by that at the time, but when I walked in for my interview, she said, take a deep breath, you can do this. And the next thing I remember is her calling me to say, you're the next member of the NAMS family. That is when the beginning of the journey began. Let me try it again. That is when the journey began with such eagle pride demonstrated by Linda Martin. She asked me one time to take 2 kids out of class and ride to the hospital where the rest of the family awaited to hear that their dad had passed away. She coached me what to say, she set me at ease, and she kept me calm. We got to the hospital and we entered the waiting room with the family. She held the mother's hand as she told her 2 young middle school kids that their dad had passed. We sat with the family for over an hour, and Linda assured them that we would do everything we could to help them get through this tough time. That is what Linda was about, family and our NAMS family. I felt we were all her kids. She gave us her best every day. She is the reason I am who I am as a teacher and a librarian today. She is the reason for everything that we do. Kids first, and teaching will come, she would say. I was honored to work with her closely to open the Linda J. Martin Middle School Library named for her work and her dedication to the New Albany Plain Local Schools. Her vision was for it to be the heart of the middle school after the students and the teachers. Words cannot express the mark she made on the countless people, and I am thankful and blessed that I was one of them. Heaven has gotten a golden angel. These are just a sampling of the amazing treasures shared by Linda Martin. She was our teacher, our leader, our principal, our inspiration, and our dear friend who left an amazing mark on this world. Thank you.
Beautifully said.
Thank you, Karen. And the family will be hosting a visitation here in the McCoy lobby on Friday from 4 to 7 for any that would like to attend and share their condolences with the family and spend time together. Moving from that, I do have 3 topics that I'd like to update and share with the board this evening. The first is regarding staffing. I'd like to just start with an overview of our 5-year forecast and the 5-year forecast plan that has been what we've been operating under from October. That forecast includes 13 certified positions for next school year. And our leadership team has been working for many weeks to analyze the impact of the reductions, to analyze the impact on student learning, and to identify where they would recommend these 13 positions lie in terms of priority. We've continued that work. We continue to revise that plan this week. We need to wait until middle school and high school course selections are finished because they will have an impact on the final list. Our timeline for that work is we expect for middle school, high school course selection to be completed by spring break. Then we will be able to use our current draft of priorities to finalize what we will present to the board at the end of March for our plan. Those 13 positions, again, will have a focus preliminary on reducing and adjusting class size in the areas where the impacts of the reductions plan were significantly more intense than we had anticipated, and then also to review the needs of intervention across the board. That would include reading, math, gifted, and mental health interventions. So we're having a lot of robust conversation as a leadership team about those priorities K-12. We're going to continue that work and continue to see how the impacts of the course enrollments affect our current draft. One of the other things we've been working with that you're going to hear this evening is the enrollment projection report. And that certainly has an impact as well, because as you'll hear this evening from Ms. Healy, we do expect to grow and have additional students this fall. So that had to be part of the consideration. Also, as part of that, at your seat, you'll see that we have a revised timeline for our athletic director selection process. That timeline includes moving through. The paper screening has been completed. We had over 60 applicants. We are now in the telephone interview stage. We will move into a first round face-to-face interview with the high school team. We will move from that into committee interviews. And you can see that we expect to be on track to continue to update the board throughout this process and bring to the board a recommendation at the end of March. Certainly, if this timeline is delayed, we'll provide updates to the board throughout the month as that process continues. The other timeline that is currently underway is the process of administrative contract renewal. We have multiple administrative contracts that are up this year. We will have a review of those contracts and those timings on the March 14th work session, and that information will be sent to the board in advance for your review. As we discussed at our board session on Friday and in some various email updates, I'd like to have the opportunity to meet with you either individually or in pairs, whatever best fits your schedule, to talk more extensively about administrative contracts in preparation for the March 14th work session. Also this evening, I just wanted to recognize another topic that's been discussed quite a bit in recent principal coffees, particularly at the 2-5, and that was the conversation about SLCs for next year and the use of the new building. As you know, we built the new building to be a flexible space so that it could accommodate whatever grade level of enrollment the district might need as the district grows over time. And certainly the building is prepared to be used for whatever grade levels a future superintendent and or the board would see fit. So I want to point out that I believe that as you go forward with the new superintendent in the fall, that's the right time to revisit both SLCs and the use of the building. There's been a lot of ideas suggested. Could the building be 6th grade only? Could it be 5-6? Could it be 4-5-6? Certainly all of those things are possible, but we need to continue the current configuration that we have today. And we need to continue with the SLC structure that we have today. We're not prepared to change that overnight for next school year. There's a lot of curricular impacts and planning that goes into that. And so we've had 6 months now in our SLC structure. We need to continue to study that. We need to stay the course. But certainly, I would even advise that starting in the fall is the perfect time with a new leader to build an engaged, collaborative process, to have parents, even students and staff members involved in mapping out what is the next iteration or the evolution of both the grade configuration in the buildings and the use of small learning communities. So I just wanted to reference that. We certainly can talk about that in future meetings. But again, this is a process that's going to need to take time. for it to evolve. I know that many of us have watched some of the news in Bexley in terms of very quick changes to move sixth grade out of middle school has big curricular impacts for us. And you've seen some of that turmoil with some of the fast changes that have been recommended there. So again, this is absolutely something that I believe should be considered, can be considered, but it will take a engaged and collaborative process that I believe you should begin in the fall. The third topic that I wanted to share about is the Ohio report card comes out this week. That is the remaining set of metrics set by the state of Ohio as part of our accountability measures. At your seat, you have a copy of the 15-16 goals for this year. As we've implemented our reductions plan this year, we stayed the course with our two core goals from 14-15, and those are improve academic achievement and in strengthen positive school culture. So what I provided for you are those two goals and the metrics that we set with those two goals. So if you look with me on the back of the first page, you'll see the list of metrics that were set in achievement, and they're in 3 domains: achievement, growth, and success and college ready. The achievement and growth metrics are all based on report card data. So we've not been able to update you because these data have not been available until the end of this week. As you know, Ohio changed its assessment, and that resulted in a significant delay in the release of this information. So this will be work that we will do at the March 14th work session. I wanted you to have it in advance so that you could spend extended time with this. And you'll see highlighted in gray in this document that I have gone ahead and updated the 14-15 data that are available that came out in the first section of the report card a few weeks ago. Okay, so this is again work that we need to continue. Usually this work is done in the fall. Again, we've been waiting many months for the Ohio data to be available. And as that comes out here toward the end of the week, we will also be sending the entire community an overview of the report card information and links to the information on the Ohio Department of Education website. So my final word is just, I know we have many months of work yet to go, but as you accept my resignation this evening, I just wanted to share again my many thanks for the great partnership of this board, for the extraordinary partnership of the staff and collaboration of the entire community. It's been my great honor to serve this district for the last 5 years, and it's bittersweet. I certainly will always be cheering for New Albany as I head off into new adventures. So thank you for all of your support. And that concludes my report this evening.
Are there any questions for Dr. Dominy at this time?
Not at this time, but I think I want to have additional conversations about the metrics, see what other metrics are potential that we can use to evaluate the rigor of the coursework, the performance over time. You know, other than just, you know, these are great, these are a good start, but I'd like to see what else is available.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I just wanted to share with you as you're thinking about those 13 certified positions. And I want to emphasize that I clearly understand that these are your recommendations and you are in a position to know far better than I or other members of the board. But I will tell you that several of us have heard from a multitude of concerned parents about our capacity still with the college counseling program. We've heard from parents who are concerned that they have not been able to arrange appointments in their sophomore and junior year even. And I just wanted to ask you to make a note of that so that while you are deliberating and thinking about that, If that is not a problem that we're going to be able to solve this year, I personally would be interested in your strategy for addressing what seems to be an overcapacity situation still.
Mhm. Thank you.
Mhm.
We will bring more information on that in the future. Thank you. And at this time, I will defer to Ms. Jenkins to introduce Mr. Chisek.
Chiswick, Mr. Nick Chiswick. He is with Julian and Grube. That is the company that performed our audit this year. The Auditor of State's Office normally does it, but last year they let us know that they were having us go out and have an independent audit firm do the audit, and then the Auditor of State's Office then reviews their work. At the end of each audit, when the audit is about to be released, we can have a post audit. This district has always had a post audit. It is typically done in executive session. But when the question was asked why, I said there's no reason that it can't be done in open session. So with that, I'll let Mr. Chiswick, did we say that right, Chiswick?
Chiswick, yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you for choosing Julian and Group to perform the audit. This is our first year here. I think it's a 3-year contract to start with, and from there we'll go on. So we'll be back the next couple of years at least. I provided you with a packet, I believe, that's basically just our 3 letters that we put in the audit. Everything else within the CAFR is provided by Mrs. Jenkins and her staff, essentially. I'm not going to go through and read every letter to you because that would take a while and probably put some people to sleep. So the first letter is basically our opinion letter. It's a standard letter. It kind of talks about the responsibilities of management as well as our responsibilities when performing our audit, how we conduct our planning of the audit, which areas we test more risky, and so on and so forth. The main thing to get from this letter here is that it was an unmodified opinion, which basically means everything that was presented to us as far as financial statements, no disclosures, everything we didn't modify anything. So everything was materially correct. So we had no changes to make. Kind of skip to the next letter if that's okay with you. We also included here the federal schedule, which shows the federal disbursements by the school district for the year, about 1.2 million. Everything on here is very in line with any other school district, same type of grants. Because you spent more than 500,000, which will be, actually it's changing next year, you are required to have a single audit, which means we are required to test, do an audit basically on a federal program. This year it was the special ed program. And so we did a basic full audit as we would do on the district as a whole, just on that grant outlined by the actual audit program set forth by the federal government, essentially. The next letter is what we call a GAGS letter. It's the letter on internal control. As part of the audit, we look at your internal controls, see what kind of procedures you have as far as signing certain things or checks and balances and things like that. We look at those to do our testing, essentially. Within here, it talks about what would be a deficiency or material weakness in internal control. If we noted you said you had the certain control, we tested it over and over and over again and over and over and over again, there was problems, that would be obviously a deficiency, in which case that could lead to other financial problems, essentially, or worse. What to get from this letter again is there was no deficiencies that we noted that we required to, or that we felt worthy of putting in the report. It also talks about compliance. This is basically your compliance with the ORCs put forth by the state of Ohio. We test everything that's applicable for the school district that the state tells us to, since we are contracted by the state of Ohio. Going through that testing, we did not note anything worthy of putting in the report either as far as non-compliance. The next letter.
Why did these all say draft?
Has it been certified, Rebecca, by the state?
This
I think it
was
just
sent
did,
to
didn't
us
it?
before. I think just last week, the Auditor of State's Office reviewed and certified it as an
Okay,
audit.
so this is official.
It is
right, but when
official.
we
Okay.
received it from Julian and Group, the
Okay.
Auditor's Office hadn't formally said yes yet. that it's okay.
Okay, thanks.
And
But
you
they
can go
did a
out to the
change.
Auditor of State website and find the report, and it no longer says draft. It does have the seal of approval from the state now too, since it has been certified. But like she said, at the time I sent this to Monica, it wasn't quite approved, in
Thank
which
you.
case we don't want to lead anybody to anything. The next letter is your federal letter. In here as your opinion on your federal schedule, as well as, once again, we test the internal controls for that and your compliance. Same thing to note here, just like the last two letters, we had was unmodified opinion again. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, no major non-compliance that we noted for the report either. So once again, a very good report. The next thing is just your schedule findings, and this is just a quick summary of everything I just discussed. Essentially, is your unmodified opinion, no weaknesses, no deficiencies, nothing to do with the federal portion either. At the bottom here, it says number 2 and number 3, the findings. Had you had a major noncompliance or a material weakness or something like that, it would be right here. So none is a good thing, essentially. And this last few pages is just for the data clearinghouse for the federal government. Everybody that has a single audit must upload their information to the federal clearinghouse, in which anybody could see. And that's for every government within America, essentially. And this is, once again, just another summary of everything that I just went over without actually putting the whole CAFR out there. So I guess that's really about it. I mean, if you have any questions, you can, I can give you my card now, or we can talk about some specifics if you like. But once again, it was a very good audit, very clean. We enjoyed our time here, and we'll be back next year too. So is there anything?
Thank you very much.
And as you read through these letters, if something pops up that doesn't make sense or whatever, you can contact me whenever you want.
We know where to find you.
Yes, exactly. Just up the road.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Healy, Tracy Healy from Future Think, and formerly Diane Healy, who has done the enrollment projections for the district for several years and has also been involved in doing enrollment projections for other area districts for many years. And so thank you for coming to present the results this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. As we said, we're going to just talk a little bit about the projections. I believe that you've all had the report, and so if you have any questions as we go through it, please feel free to jump in and we can talk about that. In doing the enrollment projections, there are several factors that we look at. Basically, that what's happened historically in the district in terms of the enrollment, the birth data. So we'll look at the number of births that have occurred in the area as compared to the number of kindergartners 5 to 6 years later. Also look at some general demographic information and what's happening, and we use some census block group data to take a look at that, and we can look at that by age group. So again, we can target areas within the district where we may see more growth or areas that may be experiencing some decline, try to give us a handle on what's happening from that perspective. And then we also look at what's happening in terms of the housing development. And since we have been doing the projections here for the past several years, we'll look at the actual versus what we had projected previously to see if there are some things that we had anticipated that didn't occur or things that occurred at a faster level than we did. So we'll also take a look at what the actual versus projected enrollments were from the previous report that was completed in January 2014. Over the past 10 years, no surprise, we've seen a lot of growth, 32%. To just over 4,800 students as the school year shows. Looking at their survival ratios, and this measures the grade to grade, year to year transition of students at all the levels, with the exception of birth decay, which I'll talk about in a second, we're right at either 100% or exceeding 100%. The high school right at like 99, 97. So it's close to 100% as we can get without on average. So again, at all the grade levels, we're seeing experience of growth at the high school level, if not a little bit of growth, certainly right at that 100% mark. So the retention is there within the high school level as well. For birth decay, again, this is looking at the birth data in the district as compared to the kindergarten enrollment 5 to 6 years later. So that has been on average about 32%. So of the children born in the area, about 32% show up in kindergarten 5 to 6 years later. That's what that measures. And looking at the birth counts, what we did is looked at a number of zip codes that are within the district. We used the 43054 zip code and the 43081. It's kind of most representative in terms of where we're seeing the children come from within, and looked at that, so we could look at that over a 15-year period and then help us with the projections moving forward as that develops. So we can see too, over the last 4 years, we've been at over 1,000 births within those zip codes, which has been the highest that we had seen over this last 15-year period. So again, that's telling us that growth is on the horizon. As more children are being born in the area, we're expecting that growth to continue. In terms of the population projections, this is based on the census block group data, and this is data that I actually purchased from Esri, which is the company that does the ArcView, ArcGIS, and those things. So they do a lot of market research to identify population projections by census block group. So what we do is roll up all the census block data within the New Albany Plain Local School District to get get these estimates and projections for 2015 and then for 5 years out in 2020. So again, overall, the population currently is estimated at just over 22,000 residents. It's projected to go to about 25,000 over the next 5 years. So a growth rate of 11%. Within the children population, we have from 0 to 4 gaining about 9.5% over that 5-year period. Ages 5 to 9, 4%. Same for ages 10 to 14. Ages 5 to 18 expected a 16% growth. And that's really just, kind of as kids are getting older, those that are already here. So overall, from that 0 to age 18, we're projecting about 8% growth within that. The median age is very young comparatively for the state of Ohio. It's at 42, I believe, right now. So the district's pretty young. So again, more potential for more children. Looking at the projections, as I said, they're by census block group. And so this shows, and apologize, in your report, it looks a little better. On the screen, it kind of is bleeding out a little bit. But within the areas, you can see there's kind of a little bit of the red within. That area is projected to grow at 5% or less from an overall population total. The yellow areas in here are projected to grow 5 to 10%. The lighter green in here over in this area, 10 to 15. And then the stark green band kind of across the center is projected to grow at a rate of more than 15%. And again, this is over that next 5-year period.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Did I hear you correctly that the kids that are kindergarten age ready, we only get in the 30 percentile of them? And does that go up by first grade because they're just choosing full day kind of programs?
Sure. Yeah, there's a number of factors because yes, there's choosing the full day option. Also, because the zip codes aren't completely representative, using that 43081 zip code, which also is a big part of Westerville.
Yes.
You're not, that's going to kind of skew the data somewhat, but we felt that that's been an important zip to use in looking at that. But that's why, yeah, it's not that people aren't choosing to come here that live in the district.
Okay, thank you.
Another quick question on this
Yes,
slide
sure.
is the growth, for example, the light green north of 161 there, is that driven by birth or is that driven by housing development? And then do you have interviews with housing developers to chart that out, or how does that get computed?
Well, this actually is the data that's purchased from Esri. So they do a lot of the market research analysis. So, and I can provide the report that kind of backs up this data from that. But in addition, I did look at what was happening in terms of housing and other things locally to help inform the projections. So I'll talk about that too in a minute.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And this chart shows, again, just for the ages 5 to 18, so our school age population. Here, there's a little bit of decline, so about 5%, a little bit more in this red area. And there's a little piece of orange here that's a less than 5% loss for those age groups. The rest of the areas all, again, showing growth. The yellow from 0 to 5%. The light green 5 to 10%, and then again, the dark green at 10% or more. Okay, so in looking at building permits, we looked at, kind of what's happening overall in the city of Columbus. Unfortunately, I was unable to get the data just that was within the district. That wasn't happening in order to get that. But we did look at also what's happening within New Albany. So you can see, where we were kind of still in the housing boom in 04, 05, where we, saw the crash in 08. And now we're seeing again, more pickup in terms of the number of new single family homes being developed in the area. Wanted to also note that this includes a portion of Columbus and Delaware and Fairfield counties and portions in Licking County, even though it's not listed here. So again, we're seeing, some of that increasing in the new housing developed. Also looked at within the city of New Albany, they provided all of the planned and platted, which is in your report, and showing that as of the end of last year, there were 317 units that were planned, and then there's over 2,000 units that are entitled, so that they're in some form of the planning stages. So they're out there units and subdivisions that will be coming online. So again, knowing that there's still plenty of land yet to be developed within the area. And then the question is going to be, and remains to be, how quickly that all develops and at what rate. And so again, this year we provided a range of projections so that we can take a look at, how things are progressing, how quickly some of the developments that are on, kind of in the works, how they're developing, and what that impact is on the student enrollment.
And all those units are projected to be residential?
Yeah, those are all residential within that.
If I may, I think it's
Yes,
important to point out, as you're looking at the detail within the report, that 700 of those 2,000, I know that number sounds very high, 700 of those 2,000 are in what is the New Albany Company Unit Bank, which they have continually deferred and or changed use or thought very specifically about what was best for the school district in terms of development. So I think you're going to continue to see very restrained plan by the New Albany Company regarding that. And so even though that number looks high, we have a very strong community partner that plans development very methodically with the schools and with the city, which I've often shared with the board is unique in my experience from other communities. So I just wanted to point that.
Thanks, April.
Right, yeah, so, yeah, I didn't mean to sound alarmed, but.
Do you think some of those units are in the property that the New Albany Company purchased from the Casta organization at the corner of 161 and Hamilton Road? Because that would take them out of play, or at least many of them out of play.
Yes, I think that would take many of those out of play. And then also the 204 that are listed in Ganton. And that was another area that I don't believe was pursued at that rate. I think you would be able to speak to that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
So, but it is nice to be able to have kind of that extensive chart that they provide, so it can kind of, again, keep tabs on that. And as things develop or as things change, we can, make those adjustments as needed. Speaking of which, that takes us to the January 2014 report, which what I did here was compare both the actual projections versus, or the actual enrollment versus the projections on the low side that we provided last time, as well as what we called the moderate or the most likely. And what we found this year is that the actual enrollment was closer to the low projection. We saw that in this year's enrollment, we had more of a flattening. There was only really a pickup of about 30 students from last year to this year, which is, not the norm. And so we found that within our low projection, we were about 55 students off. Within the moderate projection, it was about 174.4%. So again, I wanted to inform what we did this year. We made some changes and we actually added a fourth projection. We called it kind of the flattened projection to take a look at, because some of the things that have occurred in the district, and we saw this flattening this year, if that were to occur for another year, what that would mean, and then kind of resume at a more moderate rate of growth. So as I said, we kind of had, again, the low, moderate, and high projections, which are based on, kind of really how what's happening with the economy in terms of inflation, as well as the interest rates. We saw a little bump up finally from the feds with interest rates, but still, looking at where we're at with a low level of new housing, more of a moderate rate, which is kind of what we've been seeing, or this higher rate that we saw earlier in the part of the last 10 years. So the low projection shows an increase of about 3% per year. So really just kind of a, steady low growth, kind of based on what we've seen from last year to this year, last couple of years. So a pickup of about 150 students over that 10-year period of time. Continuing at the moderate rate, we've seen an increase of 11%, or about 550 students over that 10-year period. And then with the high, which really kind of mimics what we saw over that 10-year period where we were at 32%, and if that were to continue at the same rate of growth, we'd be an additional 1,300 students, which I'm not recommending is where we're going to be, but certainly that's kind of your outer edge over that 10-year period of time. And then, as I mentioned, kind of this flattened in terms of looking at, kind of what we've seen in the district this year, if that were to continue into next year, where we'd see, pretty flatline growth, kind of lower, but then an increase of 10% over that the rest of the time, about 500 students. So really kind of in line with the moderate, but, staggered out a year. So that is where we're at. So I don't know what other questions you might have for me. Yes.
When I looked at the data, it looked like there was a trend where there's some dropping off at first grade and ninth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what you might attribute that to? I mean,
Okay.
ninth grade, I know, is a big transition year.
Mm-hmm. Well, first, let's go back so we can look at that. It's the other way back here. So at first grade, it was really only within the earlier parts, year where we saw less than 100%. And then since then, it's all been pickup. So as we talked about the, parents who choose a full day option for kindergarten and then come into the district. So you've been, last couple of years, it's been a 20% pickup. And then on average, about 8%. For 8 to 9, there's been some fluctuation. And again, that is, can be due to, moving to a different option for high school and transition there. Or if you are going to move out of the area, you're going to do it before your child enters high school. As a parent of a 10th grader, I know there's no way we're going to move for the next 2 years. It would not be pretty at our house. So I think if people are going to make a move, they'll do that at that period of time. But still overall, it's been right at about 100%, but there has been some fluctuation as we've moved through that period of time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When you do your projections, I know we talked a lot about population growth, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Do you take into, does that also include potential development of undeveloped property, or is that left to the side and this is just based on what you currently have
Mhm.
and birth rates? So would further residential development accelerate some of this, or is that already built into your projections?
Well, it's really built into that high projection, so that we kind of look at, there is that still that potential. But it's, I wish it were like a straight science in some ways, that we could just say, here's the mathematical formula, but there is some art applied to it and saying, well, here's kind of what we know is happening. Here's what's happened in the past, and kind of looking at those curves to say, well, if it were to occur at that same rate, or if it were to back off, and based on, what we've seen in terms of economically and, things that are happening within the district, how that might. So you kind of have this art side applied to it as well.
So I mean, obviously we can't stop people from having children, but
No.
but and by
Even
we,
China's increased theirs,
yes,
right?
by we, I don't mean the board, the community. But as far as development goes,
Right.
that is one factor that this community could control
Yes.
to a certain degree,
Right.
to help. The other things are left to individual people, but we could,
Right.
but we could
Right,
control residential.
absolutely. And, as Dr. Dominy said, the relationships with the development community are so important and key as you move forward. And yeah, I've been very fortunate to have that, because there are lots of communities that do not. So,
Yeah, we are really truly fortunate because as a school board or a school district, we really have no authority over development whatsoever. So
Right.
our strength, our ability to influence our own future lies with those relationships that we do have with developers. So
Yeah.
it's critically important to us being able to manage our growth.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
This time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Darrow and Ms. Kalinowski for introductions of the firms.
I'm just going to interject one thought here, just to make it clear to those of folks who are in the audience tonight and interested in this topic. I just want to let you know that this is these are two informational presentations for the board. We do not anticipate making a decision this evening, but we hope to be able to accomplish that by our next meeting, which is the 14th of March. So, Ms. Kalinowski?
I'd like to start by thanking both of the firms that are joining us tonight. They are joining us on very short notice, and they know the time frame that we need to work in. And I feel fortunate that both firms have been able to join us tonight. So I'd like to introduce Ray & Associates first.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Brian. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Hi, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
There were no babies to kiss, so we just shook hands. But I hear you need those babies.
No, I'm just kidding.
You're on.
Okay, well, great. First off, we want to know, is there a time frame for our presentation, and is there a question and answer time frame for us as well?
We had planned on no more than 40 minutes altogether.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Well,
if you-
we'll be less than that.
okay, good.
For you. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Well, again, thank you for having us. My name is Ryan Ray. I'll let Bill introduce himself. I am the corporate director of the firm, and I have been in my current position with the firm for around about 8 or 9 years. Okay. I live and reside in St. Louis, Missouri. And thank you for having us. And I'll let Bill introduce himself.
I'm Dr. Bill Newman. I'm the National Executive Director of the firm. Ryan will tell you a little bit about the firm as we get started. I've been with the firm for over 20 years and watched it grow to be the largest in the country. And he'll explain a few things about that. My background is as an educator. My last 13 of 33 years in Iowa was as superintendent. So I know the work and appreciate the work. With that, we'd like to get going.
Great.
I click it
Oh,
through.
you want to click? Great. Thank you. Okay, so as Bill said,
Tell them what
sure.
pages we're on.
We're on page 2. If you pull out this that says what sets us apart, that's kind of what we're going to go through. And that's really what we want to focus on tonight, because you're going to hear a lot of information, but we're going to tell you why we're a little bit different. So we're based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and we have that little circle up there with the downtown location, because sometimes when we do presentations in California and in the Boston or New York area, they hear Iowa and they think, well, it's just a cornfield. So that's a little bit, that's right. So the firm affiliates itself with several national organizations such as AASA. In fact, AASA was last week in Phoenix, Arizona. So we were talking and making connections with several superintendents all over the country there. We also affiliate ourselves with the NSBA, the National School Board Association. I don't know if you guys will be attending that this year. Oh, okay. Well,
No.
come on.
We're trying to be very fiscally conservative.
Fiscally
and
conservative, I
prudent.
understand.
Yes.
No, NSBA is the National School Board Association, and we will be at that in Boston this year. We affiliate ourselves with NAPSE, which is the National Alliance of Black School Educators, as well as ALIS, which is the American Latino Association of School Educators as well. In fact, 3 of the 4 founding members of ALIS actually are associates with us. And we also go ahead and present at several state and national organizations across the country. So go to our next page, or you can follow along on the screen. A little bit about our experience. We're the oldest and largest national executive search firm that does this in the country. So we've been in business since 1975, longer than any other firm. The firm is under sole continuous ownership, so we've never been bought out, merged with another group or organization. And also the recruiting the nation's educational leaders is our primary business. Nobody else can really say that. Some other firms dabble in other areas, but this is strictly what we do, educational leaders. Okay. The next slide, it talks a little bit about our associate continuity. We have over 170 associates that work with us. All right. So obviously somebody like me, the corporate director, and Bill, the national director, but we have other associates across the country. For example, if somebody applies for this job and they are from the state of Washington, we have 2 or 3 associates out there where I can pick up the phone and call Jim Shoemake and say, Jim, what do I need to know about this individual? It's great what they present on paper, but sometimes what's really on the ground and word of mouth is important too. So the other really important part of this slide is our associates work extremely well together and typically in teams. So what we want to tell you right now is the team that's in front of you, Bill and I, we're going to be the team the whole time if selected. Okay. We're not just here to sell the job. So you have the corporate director and the national director here with you tonight. Okay.
One thing I might add to that, and I think you can hear me without the mic, is that every search has a team assigned to it that you probably will never see, but they're trained background investigators that really look at candidates. They've been well trained in how to do that and look at their current jobs in the past, so that we see the career and track record of anybody that's a serious candidate for the position.
So our next slide talks about diversity. So over 40% of our associates are women or minorities. So it brings in a whole bunch of different perspectives. and helps in vetting candidates and in our pools. We also place more women and minorities than any other search firm in the country. How do we know that? We know that because we track who we place and we follow our competitors as well. So we're very proud of that fact. Database candidate care. I can go ahead and tell you, we do have a database, okay? But our database is a little bit different. We flush it every year. So when we go and we start looking at people that might fit your profile, which Bill is going to get into later on, we're not just digging into a barrel with somebody that applied 7 years ago and say, hey, what is she doing now? Okay, so it's fresh, but we actually really don't like to use our database at all. What we really like to do is recruit to your profile. You all are seeking a good candidate that has a good job now. You don't want somebody that's reading the want ads. So it's our job to go out there and recruit specifically to this position. So we do have a database, yes, but we try not to use it at all.
We're very objective in this work. In fact, we have nobody in mind for the job as we speak to tonight. We wouldn't until we actually have you approve a profile that we would help you develop, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But I think it's important to note that we're not a placement service in any fashion. We find people for jobs, not jobs for people, and there's a huge difference.
And I also think it's really important, and Bill can go ahead and speak to it, that we are very familiar with Ohio. Okay, we've done several jobs in Ohio. Bill, you want to go ahead and?
Well, currently we're working on the state superintendency of Ohio, which is an interesting job. We've done a lot of state superintendencies. They're all interesting. I'm not trying to set Ohio above or below any of those, but also we've worked on other searches in Ohio. Personally, I've been up in the winter on Lake Erie, Lorain, a couple of times. Snow is nice. I don't get much of it where I live now. I moved away from it, but it's cold there. It's really cold.
I've also done some work in Shaker Heights as well as Columbus. So we are very familiar with Ohio.
Yeah.
Bill's.
We're also familiar with the fact that working in states where it's open, actually very open as to the aspect of candidates and making them known. One of the things in Lorain that was good is that the media worked with us to reveal the names only toward the end of the search rather than everybody that applied, because that yielded a lot more candidates. That's an important thing that we'll talk with you probably in the future.
I'll let Bill go ahead and talk about the process.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
When you were talking about recruiting to the position and reaching out to potential candidates who aren't looking for a job, can you just talk a little bit more about that process?
Sure. Go on.
I can start, and Ryan can add in. But remember, he said we have 170 or so associates across the country. We blast out to them that we have the position, number one, because word of mouth is very important. You know, we'll get in the recruiting process just by good advertising and spending advertising money where it's very productive. We'll get people to apply for the job that are regional and Ohio. Okay, there's no mistaking that. We'll get them all. I mean, if they're interested in the job, we'll get them. But the other part of this is being able to recruit through people that reach out to people that they know they've got some anchor back in, maybe they were a Buckeye for all we know. And they want to come back to Ohio because they really liked Ohio, but they got experience somewhere else. And we're trying to recruit them by our associate actually talking to them. People know people, and I think that's a very important part of our recruiting. And actually, you profit by the experience that someone gets outside of Ohio and would like to come back. So that's part of recruiting, but we're very aggressive in it. I mean, we're looking for people. Obviously, we cold call people to say there's a really good job near Columbus, okay? And, you know, we'd like you to take a look at it and call us if you have questions. I mean, we go through a series of like districts,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Right, on this slide, and we're going to show you at the end of this presentation a little more detail because I think it's important about the reaching out to your community. But board input and preparation, we like to spend time with the board. Candidates ask us two invariable questions if they're serious about the job. And it's not salary, it's not very much about the contract. It's really about, tell us about the board. And secondly, tell us about the issues of the district. What am I going to face when I get there? Well, to do that, we like to work with the board as a whole, but we would like to interview each one of you up to an hour or so, however long it takes. And sometimes it's exceeded an hour, of course. But we gather that information so that we can condense that into something that our office can actually, if somebody calls there to our corporate office in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and said, tell me about the New Albany Plain Local, I think it's called, district. Tell us about that job. Is it a budgetary issue or what? They can answer because we've actually established that for them. But likely what they'll do is they'll say, call Dr. Newman and forward the call to me. So we like to have that conversation with board members individually. The other thing is profile development and process. That's really important to us. We ask the board for the opportunity to meet your public, your staff, your students, and get information from them. We have a survey that we use that you can put up on your website. It'll be on ours that people can respond to, but we'll hold public forums. We'll do any of the groups that you like. In fact, the state of Ohio, when they had us there, that I think, how many meetings did we have in that 3-day period? I think about 30.
Yeah.
Including interviewing each one of the 18 board members. But the other thing that we do in that is that when we meet with those small groups or focus groups or whatever forums you might have us establish and work with, we ask them some questions that stimulate conversation and give us some feedback. And part of the feedback, of course, is what they think the issues are and what they think is good about, help us recruit. What's good about this school district? What's good about living here? Because some candidates are not going to know very much about this, but they're a very qualified candidate in their own right. So we hold those meetings. We bring that information back to you for you to establish what the profile content for the position should be. Very important part of our work, and it's very satisfactory to your public. It's a big bite of the apple, truly. Recruitment and screening, I think we've already talked about that, but once we get the candidates' material to us, if we get 60, we have to look at those and say who are qualified and who are not, okay? Well, if you take it from A, B, and C piles, so to speak, A is going to be obvious they're qualified. We're going to have to really do their backgrounds carefully. B are, well, we have to decide, do they go here or do they go here? And the C pile, they probably are not qualified or ready for this job yet. We have to make that determination too. But then we will actually do the screening, that background investigation at that time and get it down to, if you have 60 applications, finished files. By the way, we track our competition, like he said, and sometimes we don't get the job. We look to see how many candidates applied for a job, and we're usually double to 3 times as many actual candidates. Without that, the thing I say about that is we're looking just for the one best candidate for the job. And that number, just simple statistics tell you if you have a larger pool to pick from, the more likely you'll have an array of 5 or 6 candidates that make it hard for the board to actually choose. So continuing looking at this, we're going to talk about the how transparent we are with the candidate. We have a video system that you'll see that Ryan is going to share with you in just a little bit, I think on another slide. But we go through the selection of finalists with you. We have a very specific way of bringing the board together in consensus that these are the candidates. If we brought you 11 out of 60, okay, which might be pretty close to it, you would actually sit down and look at those and go through our process. We use a metric. It's called a forced choice matrix. And it produces a ranking of the candidates of all 11. And at some point, you're going to say, here's our top 5 or our top 6. But those are the ones we want to meet in person. And at that time, when you're looking at the 11, you'll also see them in a short video clip. And he's going to show you an example of one in just a little bit. So transition process, future planning. We actually have another feature of our firm. We're the only ones that do the videos, but we also have another feature of our firm is that we will provide you with, it's a board questionnaire survey. You look at it and it's 9 areas of board performance and you decide how you're performing on that. We bring that back to you in results after you've done it individually to show how you're looking compared to other boards, better than some, same as some areas that maybe with the start of a new leader, the board itself would like to address.
And we actually used to do that only one time. Now, for however many years that the candidate stays with you, we'll come back and do that every single year with you as a board.
No cost.
No cost. Okay.
And did I read that you also help us develop as a team the interview questions and then debrief that and come up with kind of
We'll
the
send
summary?
you some sample questions to begin with, and they'll be customized to new office people.
Okay.
And then you look at those and say, well, we don't want to ask that question, or we maybe should tweak this question and ask it a little different way, or you could generate other questions, of course. So. with
And you
that,
help
I
us
think-
debrief candidates too after we've interviewed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do the
That's part of that process. I'm
Do the
sorry.
candidates get the questions beforehand?
No.
No. Not even on the video.
Do you use a process that might be collaborative once you get to the finalists? So perhaps it's not just the board who are interviewing maybe the top
If
3
you're
or
at,
4.
We've done that, and we've done lots of ways. I mean, we've been in this business long enough to have done, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And sometimes boards want to have candidates meet. What we suggest, if you were to interview 6 or 7 candidates, you get it down to here are the top 3.
Mhm.
That's the time to give people another bite of the apple if you want to.
Right.
So that you're really looking at the candidates that the board says, we could hire you at any one of these. Let's see what
Yeah.
we've got some very specific ways of doing that, even in a public forum.
Okay, good.
You said you've done hundreds and hundreds of searches. Approximately how many searches do you do a year?
as a firm, usually in the last 3 years, I would say probably about 50.
50 superintendents?
No.
50 total?
I would
searches?
say normally about 45 superintendent
We
searches.
do a few principal and.
Chief operations officer, chief academic officer for a district.
cabinet positions.
Yep.
Which happen because sometimes we place a superintendent and he says, can you find us a COO or a CFO?
Sure. So total number of searches per year is about 50?
About 50.
Thanks.
You said you had about 170 associates. Are those employees or those independent contractors, or how does that work? Are they,
They're ad hoc employees. Meaning,
do they work on commission?
yes.
Okay.
Meaning if they're employed to work on a search, they get paid for that search.
Okay.
And it's usually regional. For that, they can go, and one of us would go, one of the corporate people would go, but we have a local person there also.
And then other associates might just be doing the background checks and writing a confidential report for us where they may get charged or not charged. They may get $75 or $100 for doing that.
Or 200.
200. Okay. Bill likes to work on those big searches. To go along here with the time, We kind of talked a little bit about some of this. So building the profile, we will meet with all of you and do the individual board member interviews, and then meet with other individuals throughout the community and hold open forums in your community as well. We will do that characteristic survey that Bill was talking about and putting that up on your website, and having people that come to those open surveys fill them out right there if they haven't already. We also will have them in paper at, say, the high school and the middle school, et cetera, in case parents want to come. Maybe they don't have access to the internet, they can come and pick them up, or teachers can maybe send it home to parents as well. So the profile report, we can come and give that to you in person if you wish. We can also deliver that by Skype. We understand that some districts are being frugal, and we understand that. So there's ways, we're very technology friendly, and anything that we can do to save you time and money, we would absolutely like to do that for you. So once the board approves the profile for the position with any other desired changes, we will get into the recruitment process. Excuse me. So we can advertise the position in national venues such as Ed Week. Obviously, that is one of the biggest places that you can advertise a position, and as well as on our website, Facebook, Twitter, and most importantly, free is those 170 associates across the country that we go and tell them to recruit. And so again, I use that term aggressively recruit by reaching out to those candidates that have good jobs already. Bill, I thought you wanted to say something.
No.
Okay, great.
Just keep going.
Wonderful. The next part, the candidate presentation.
Yeah, and I touched on this earlier, but we typically bring, as you see the numbers up there, around 8 to 12, and help the board work that down to the ones that you'd really like to meet. What you're going to see in just a little bit, we're the only firm that does this at this time. I think we'll get copied, which is, you know, an endorsement really. But we're the only ones that do the video for candidates. What that enterprise is all about, the candidate makes a video through Spark Hire. I think it's the firm.
Basically, Spark Hire will generate, we work with Spark Hire. And what will happen is we ask those candidates to do a one-way video interview, answering 3 or 4, thank you, educational questions, okay?
The point is, they don't see those until they open the
Correct.
computer.
And what's great about it is now they're not just a name on a piece of paper. They can get to show you exactly how they might interview. For you as a board, it's wonderful because now you can see how they might interview before you pay to have them come into the district. So it's a very, very powerful tool, and you can go ahead and hit play there. And so we don't have the volume, obviously, for this, but you can see that Mr. Apostle right here is just telling us who he is, his current position, his background in the education field. And he has wonderful red pillows. I've seen candidates do these in all sorts of fashions. So
I've seen him do one in the bedroom and the kids were screaming in another part of the house.
we actually had somebody do it on his iPhone, and he was the referee at a middle school basketball game. And so he just ran out at halftime, recorded it in his car window, and he was known as the car guy to the board. And actually he got the job, and he's been there for 4 years. But you will see that his next question is, what do you consider the greatest challenges and obstacles, and how would you involve the community? These are questions that you would love to hear this candidate answer before you bring them in. So again, this is just one of the most powerful tools out there that we've utilized, and boards love it. And actually candidates love it too. So you want to continue about the candidate or finalizing? Oh, yeah. No, you're fine. Yep, to 11. So now we brought you the candidates, and so what are we doing now? We're finalizing the search. You want me to do that slide? Okay. So we will go ahead and assist the board, assisting the district and the finalists to reach contractual agreements with you. Anything like that, we can help you out. Assisting the board on site visits to finalists' current places of employment. Site visits are somewhat, we're finding, a thing of the past. Now that you have the internet and you can find out everything about that person, including what they ate for cereal that day, sometimes it's not necessary to spend the money and go to see a district. But if that's something that you want to do, we can absolutely help you with that.
So if you told us that we'd like to meet an elementary principal, the Elm Street elementary principal, and maybe the PTA person, and a high school teacher, and a high school principal, or whatever, they'd be there waiting for you because we would line it up for you. We've had teams do it, go from boards, not the whole board, but usually a contingency of the board. And if you want to do that, we can set it up so that it really is productive. It's not like just going and talking to Floyd with the Herper.
Yeah. In the last 3 years, we've actually had just 2 districts decide to do it. In fact, I'm just finishing up a search right now, Joliet, Illinois, which is a Chicago suburb, big district, 18,000. They are looking at somebody from California. And so 2 of their board members flew out, and I think they had maybe in 2 to 3 days, they had like 30 some meetings. So they chose to do that because that's what their district has always done in the past.
I do remember one search where the board said we'd like to make a site visit to this candidate because he was from the Solomon Islands. Wasn't that good of a candidate.
Yeah, they just want a vacation maybe. But what we will do is, so we will maintain contact with the new superintendent and the Board of Education as long as the superintendent is in tenure. So again, we talked about that board self-assessment survey that we will come back.
Those are the 9 areas in Dartmouth.
Mhm. So those are the 9 areas that we will work with you on. And then lastly, providing a 2-year guarantee to you. All right. So if the candidate for some reason leaves or you deem them that you no longer want that candidate, we will come back and do that search for, just expenses. Okay. And then I believe, thank you, sir. Sure. That's mostly the gist of our presentation, but Bill wants to go ahead and kind of walk through a couple different steps here, and then we're going to open it up to any questions that you all may have.
I want to go to page 2 and page 3 of this one that's got the picture of our district in the circle toward the left. We really want to emphasize that our system is very detailed, and these are the details that really make the difference in a search. We talked about building the profile and involving the public, and you finalizing the characteristics, building a flyer that we would like to put up on website, telling about the district and how to apply for the position. You finalize and approve all those things in like the second meeting that you would have with us, okay? And at that time, we'd also develop a timeline for the search so that every step would be public and you would know each step and where we were at any given point on the calendar during the search. We developed the recruiting materials, that's the flyer, and we've gone to a 1-page, 2-sided flyer that's really easy to use if you're a working individual and interested in the position, and you got a copy of it or saw it online, you can get the information you need.
And we developed that flyer because people in your district have already, they have other jobs to do. So our staff can go ahead and take that on.
Right. He talked about how we advertise the position, but you approve all the advertising. That's very important. Some of it is free, easy to approve. Some of it costs money. So we can guide you through that. We know what's productive, what a productive advertising venue will get you, and we can show you that. We talked about the aggressive recruiting, in-depth candidate screening, and then we go into the background investigations that survive that screening. And then he talked about the video interview and the candidate presentation. This gets into a little more detail. The board's provided with the video interviews and will have the opportunity to observe those interviews one time. But if you look, the board in the center, the larger block there, it says board consensus voting instrument on candidates. This is where you compare each candidate to the other. Say we brought you 11. It's a one-off comparison. Compare candidate 1 to candidate 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4. And then in the next level of comparisons, it's 2 to 3, 2 to 4, and 3 to 4, and so on. And all of that taken together builds an actual ranking of the candidates. And you do that individually, and it's a long meeting. It takes some time to read that material, see the interviews. But when you're done, you can look at the results and say, we've agreed that these are our top 6 candidates from what we've seen. We don't stop at that point. It's open for discussion. Let's look and see. Maybe Laura, you might have had one candidate rated very highly where John didn't. Okay, so let's talk about what you saw. Maybe he saw something we missed, that sort of thing. So there's an intense discussion after that, so that we agree on, here are the candidates we'd really like to bring in and meet. So getting through this, we set up and help you develop the first interview, and after the first interview, we work with you through the matrix. Now you know how to use it. The boards really like to use it again to pick out what the ranking is of the candidates that you've actually met in person. It takes a lot less time once you've met them. It's not looking at their paper material. It's looking at them. The selection and notification, we take care of. The bottom box there, we notify all the candidates if they got an interview or if they didn't even get an interview. We make contact with them to let them know we appreciated their application. Any questions about the process at that point?
Okay.
It gets into some work.
I just want to do a quick time check.
Absolutely. So
so-
what questions, after you hear our presentation, what questions can we answer for you all?
When you have placed the successful candidate, do you know what your retention rates are? Is it 100% stay 2 years or?
Well, let me ask you before I answer, how many of you actually know how many across the national average, how long a superintendent stays?
I don't know that number.
3 to 4.
3 to 4, anybody else?
I think it's around 3.
It's
Yeah.
3. All right. And then in an urban system, it's 2.
Mhm.
So we have done our track. Bill, do you want to,
Well,
or I can go ahead.
very seldom have we ever had to go back. I'll give you a very quick example. We had to go back and do a small district over again because they hired somebody that we didn't recommend, even though they went through the process and they weren't happy. But her husband was a physician and the town needed another physician, so this was a 2. And it was like they were hiring a superintendent to get another physician in the community. Well, she didn't work out. We went back and did it.
Another example is Governor Huckabee came in and handpicked somebody for his cabinet. Not our fault, but we went back and did it. But to answer your question, our average is around 6 years. So it's double the national average. That means we've done our homework. We really think of it as building a marriage, because I'm marrying a candidate to a district and it's got to be the right fit. Because if it's not, we're going to be back here using our 2-year guarantee and we don't like to use it because we've used it a handful of times in 40 years.
Higher than 6. I think it might be close to 8 the last time we checked.
It might be.
It's-
How do you handle internal candidates?
Internal candidates, if I can go ahead, I'll just go ahead and let you know from the firm's perspective, they're handled just like every other candidate. All right. There's
They
no,
go through the same process.
exactly. So no special treatment whatsoever.
Now, sometimes boards say, well, they applied and they're internal, but we owe them an interview. And that's a decision you have to make. Courtesy interviews usually turn out not to be so courteous. You just got to-
From a pricing structure in your contract, though, they're included like anybody else as far as our costs in dealing with Ray and Associates. An internal candidate, we're going to pay for the same way we pay for an external candidate that you identify.
Yes.
Yep.
It's a flat fee for the service. No extras. The only paragraph in there that if there was some point at which you said, we don't really want to do this part, you know, we've had boards say, here's the job description, you're not going to meet our policy. Well, with that, there could be a rate, but you're probably going to obligate yourself to really get out and let the public be part of this.
It's my understanding that your public probably wants to be, I mean, this
For
is a
sure.
great turnout
Yes.
for this kind of a meeting. So, yeah.
Right.
Other
Are
questions?
there any other questions?
How are we doing in terms of the hiring season? What's our time window? How, obviously we want to have the right candidate, but when does the pool start drying up in terms of people making plans for next year?
It's really a year-round deal now, but we won't be in the year-round part of it. We finish certainly, you know, in this window, which is still the productive window for candidates.
It is. Usually there's two seasons. You have the before the holiday season, and then you have after the holiday season. So right now, wrapping up with the AASA and the NSBA convention right now, you're still fine. This is the hotbed. So not worried about that at all.
We don't like to go very deep into May to finish it, but we've gone all the way into June and had success. So all good. I mean, we're good.
And Bill and I were actually talking, looking at possible timelines for this. And we feel comfortable in saying that, you know, if you wanted this wrapped up by the end of April, we could do that. We feel comfortable. If you want to go further on, that's fine as well.
Maybe you mentioned this at the outset. Would you two be the primary contacts for the search? Or-
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would have the corporate director and the national director.
Then I know it's early and we asked you to come in on a very short notice, but any initial thoughts on the attributes? If you were talking to these candidates, what you know about New Albany thus far would be a couple of things you might toss out as to why New Albany. I know it's early, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm curious.
We actually know quite a little bit.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at some of this budgetary information. And I know that the district is supporting the district more than the state by a great deal. We know that before even seeing this, it do growth better. And growth is continuing to be predicted. We saw that. Went all the way back to 1999 to look at growth till today. And also saw the percentage of state participation in dollars for your budget, which is lower compared to even what they do for private schools.
Yeah, $580 per student compared to like $1,000 for private school, correct? Yeah.
So I guess what we would say is that this district has some diversity, has some issues that you want to continue working on. I know you're 10 for 10 on grade schools as far as performance, but when you start digging into the data, you see some pockets of things that I know the district's working on. We want to continue to improve that. You know, there's some populations in any district where you have to be very aggressive in what you do to bring up performance. So a number of parents don't want to come to a district and just say, well, this is a great district, so I guess I'll go there. They really want a challenge. I think we still got some challenges.
We can do that.
We can offer a challenge. That's true. Well, thank you very, very much. We appreciate both your quick response to our request and also the presentation this evening.
No, no,
And,
thank you for having us. And thank you for saying earlier when you were planning on making a
Yes.
decision. So we appreciate that as well.
March what?
14th is our next meeting.
Great.
And I know you've been working with Mrs. Kalinowski.
Yes.
And if you have any additional questions, or if any of us have any questions, we will communicate through Debbie.
Okay.
So that you only have one point of contact.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Have a great night.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
you.
Have a good night. Come on up. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you for having us. I'm Alan Leese. I'm a Senior Vice President with Hazard Young and Atia. We're a national search firm specializing in school searches. We have offices, our main offices are in Chicago, and we have offices on the East and West Coast as well. I'm very excited to be here today. I tend to talk fast and I tend to get excited. I would tell my friends on the East Coast when I worked there that it was because I was born in Ohio. I'm not sure that's true, but in any event, feel free to slow me down, especially since I'm back in Ohio. That's something that I can easily get carried away. I mentioned to you I'm a retired superintendent, or maybe a recovering superintendent. Sometimes I think that is the better term, from Naperville, Illinois. And what was really exciting, Naperville is a great suburb, western part of Illinois, west of Chicago, that is. And in looking at your mission statements and values, doing the homework about your district, it's amazing how much it matches. So I really think I understand very clearly the type of district you have, the values you have, the community involvement you have, and what you want for your kids. So that would make it made it particularly exciting for me to be here. I also worked on the East Coast. Let's see, I should be advancing my slides. See, there we go. I also worked on the East Coast in Fairfax County, Virginia, and I've been with the firm for the last 7 years and have led searches particularly in Ohio, North Carolina, Maryland, and Virginia. Some large urban districts, Baltimore County, Maryland, Prince George's County, and actually Columbus, Ohio, part of the initial search process there before they went, and then I helped them with the interim, and then we moved on from that point in time. But we were actually selected, and we started that search process before they made some decisions to change. But prior to that, I'd worked in Upper Arlington and Evanston, I think, are particularly the school systems that are most like yours that I've worked on. So I've worked in large and small districts. My partner is Dave Estrop. He's fairly new to the firm, but he provides the Ohio expertise. Hopefully I can provide some of the national perspective, some of the experiences. No two searches go alike. There's always some surprise. It's always a different surprise in every search, and hopefully I'd be able to guide you through that process as well. Dave, as you see, has been in Springfield, Lakewood, and Worcester. He knows Ohio very, very well, and that's why we felt this combination was important. We're one of the largest search firms in the nation. I think probably the one that we debate whether it's larger or not is the one that's presented just before me, in terms of his history. We've done over 1,200 searches, national network. We have 100 associates across the country in 27 states. The folders you have are labeled ECRA. We are a division of ECRA. Several years ago, we became part of the ECRA group. ECRA does strategic planning. ECRA does data analysis and other kinds of things. But we stay, and most of the people that work in our part of the firm specialize particularly in searches. Now, in the folder that I gave you, I would point you next to the chart that was in the proposal that we sent you, and I'm hopefully just gonna highlight a couple of things here in terms of this chart, which is the typical search process. Our search processes, like most search processes, this isn't really reinventing the wheel, have 4 parts: the planning phase, the recruitment phase, the selection phase, and the appointment phase. In the planning phase, it's particularly critical. Once you select a firm, we need to spend several hours with you as a board and plan the entire search. From looking on the web and reading your bios, et cetera, I know you're not only committed parents, but you're hugely involved in community activities as well as all the school board responsibilities. So just getting a calendar together is a major challenge in and of itself, and we need to try to plan ahead. The searches absolutely work better if all board members can be at all the key times in terms of the interviews, et cetera. And I hate to break bad news to you, but I need to tell you up front that the search process just takes some time. We think it's the single most important thing you'll ever do as a board. We think it's critical that you do it right, but it ultimately will take up 20 to 25 hours in terms of most boards going through the process, in terms of interviewing, selecting candidates, making sure you feel good about the candidates, and then debating, obviously, which candidate is the right person. In the planning phase, we're not only going to meet with you, we're going to meet with the community. We develop leadership profiles particular to your community. They're based on surveys. And in terms of the survey, we developed a survey, an online survey from the research about what it takes to be a great superintendent. That's this part of the packet. And then we developed this online survey. We divided it into 5 categories, and we put this online for key constituencies to participate in. We let you choose 6 groups. Often it's, I would say, particularly with a high school district or having a high school, I would say students should be a part of it. Parents, teachers, support staff, administrators, et cetera, and community members, so that all people can participate. This is based on the research. They're all critical to success, but what we're really going for is, and what happens on the back in terms of the superintendent profile, this is the sort of research-based analysis. This is what people see on the screen. They see these basically 25 characteristics, and they're asked to choose the top 8. Now, they're all important. People will stop you in the grocery store and say that was an impossible survey that you set out in terms of doing this, because they're all important. Yes, they're all important, but what we want to know is which 8 are most important for this district for this moment in time. And that's what we're trying to flesh out. And we also want to see to what extent do teachers agree with parents, to agree with community. We want to see if there are significant differences between what's most important in your next superintendent. We pull together our focus group interviews. Dave and I would probably spend 2 days each at the same time, meeting with different groups the whole time, have open-ended community forums, meet with all the key groups that you think is important for us to meet with. We pick the groups in our planning sessions. Then pull together, and we'd interview you, each of you individually. We pull all that together in a leadership profile, and looking at a schedule, I would hope that we would be back by your April board meeting in a public session to present your leadership profile. At that point, we lock in your key characteristics. We'll make a recommendation to you as to what we think the key characteristics you're looking for based on all of that community data input, et cetera, but it's up to you to make the final decision. Once we have those characteristics, we refer candidates to them, number 1. First of all, to say, this is what they're looking for. And several times candidates have said, you know, this just isn't me. Well, better we go down that road, and let's just be straight and up front and not belabor the process in terms of that. But basically, candidates know then what you're looking for. We use those questions and help you write questions to those characteristics, et cetera, so that those questions and those issues come from your community, from all the groups that are important in terms of the input process. That's basically the planning phase. It's one of the most important phases, et cetera. We then go into the recruitment phase. At that point in time, we're finding people that don't know they might want to be your superintendent, because that's one of the important functions that we provide. We certainly do the advertisements, and we sometimes develop great candidates from people that are simply applying for this position. It's not typical, but I applied to be superintendent in Naperville from an ad in the newspaper. So sometimes it works that way, and sometimes hopefully the best candidate, I don't know, but sometimes hopefully the best candidate can also come out of that part of the process.
And Dr. Lees,
Yeah.
So how do you go about reaching out to those candidates who aren't looking for a position?
Basically, we use our associates to do that. So we notify our associates of what we're looking for and what the key characteristics are, number one. Number two, we have our own network of contacts. And the reality is that in a large search firm, you're meeting with people all the time. They may not be a good fit for the district that you're working on at that moment in time, but you keep some of them in the back of your mind to come back to, et cetera. You also know who you've placed. And basically, we have people that do so many of these searches and know so many people that we call people, we get recommendations, and then we get them from your community as well. We ask people that are involved in who we do the interviews and do the surveys. Is there someone you want to recommend to us that we might not know about? Hopefully we do, but maybe there's someone we don't know about. So we get them from our associates. We get them from the key people that do most of the searches. We get them from people we trust. And we get them from the surveys and the focus groups that we do with you as well.
Thank you.
In terms of the recruitment, we identify then probably, my guess is that Dave and I would identify about 20 to 25 top candidates. We would interview them all. To save you money, we'd probably do most of the interviews by Skype, assuming that they're not all in one place or they're not where we are, et cetera, or where one of us is, because Dave's in Ohio, obviously. But we do personal interviews with those folks, then decide amongst ourselves, between ourselves, I guess, which are the top candidates that we bring to you. We spend a long time with you, not only structuring the first round of interviews, going through the candidate pool, helping you identify why we think these people are important. You will have told us in the planning, do you want to interview the first round 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, or whatever? We had one board once who wanted to interview 22 people. Not sure that was a good idea. But in any event, we'll get that number with you. We'll present who we think are the top candidates. We'll tell you why we think they're the best candidates. We'll review the candidate pool with you. You can even review the candidate pool online. We have a means for you to do that if you want to go in depth. But our job is to help you. And obviously, this isn't rocket science. We use structured interviews. We try to be fair and equitable to all the candidates. But there's an element of gut here, too. And sometimes you'll just know this person is a good fit or this person isn't a good fit, no matter what the quality of their particular answers are. As it relates to that. Then in the selection phase, we're bringing those candidates to you. You're interviewing them. We call it the survivor exercise. You're not selecting your superintendent. You're voting people off the island. You're voting to, let's say, 2 people. Usually, if there's 5, usually about 2 people off the island. Then bringing 3 back for more intensive interviews, because there you're looking for fit. There you're looking for, is this a person you can trust? Is this a person you can work with? Is this the right person in terms of this moment in time for this particular district? And then we help with the appointment, et cetera, and work with you in terms of all the issues in terms of making the final choice and the final decision. We facilitate those sessions. I think one of the key things I would say to you is that if you've been through this process before, I'm not sure, but one of the things that I've learned is that basically search firms work for you, the school board. Our job is to do things the way you think is best for your community, because you're the ones that are invested, you're the ones that are going to be here. But hopefully, when this works right, this is also an issue of trust. I more than once said to a board, well, we certainly could do it that way. Could I tell you 3 or 4 reasons why that might not be a good idea? And then if you want to do it that way, that's the way we'll do it, kind of thing. And that's how we find this whole thing works best. We'll encourage you to do a site visit, depending on your candidates and where they are from, et cetera. And we'll help with all the contract stuff and all those other kinds of things. Our guarantees, we'll stay with you until you're completely satisfied with all the candidates interviewed. There's no reason that shouldn't happen this year. It very rarely happens, but if for some reason you don't find the exact right candidate, we will be with you, no additional charge, for as long as it takes to find the right candidate for you. If the superintendent departs within the first 2 years, et cetera, we'll do a new search at no additional cost. We will not recruit any candidate who we've placed in the last 5 years. So we won't turn around once you have your superintendent and rob from you in terms of one of our next districts. And we'll match the price of a similar kind of process if that is a particular concern. The fees in terms of that, they're quoted in your proposal. That's basically all the associates works, all the material, et cetera, that we'll provide you. The only additional expenses are advertisement costs. We have negotiated with Ed Week, and we have several advertising packages, and we'll give you some choices in terms of that. We'll try to minimize associate travel. I'm basically at your discretion. I'm in Chicago. I can come in via Skype, I can come in via speakerphone, I can come in person. But actually, I've been to Columbus enough. I found the ways to do it as economically as possible, I think, in terms of that. And then obviously the travel expenses of your candidates. I would think that a district like yours would have some candidates nationally. I would talk to you about making a highly recommended candidate from Alaska or Hawaii, just to make sure that you really wanted to see their resume, et cetera, in terms of before incurring that expense. And then finally, there's the independent background check. And the materials on that are in the back of the right-hand side of your folder. We use an outside investigative firm. We can do background checks of basically university degrees, criminal history, legal issues, bankruptcy, financial issues, certification issues, all those kinds of things are part of the standard search. We can also do complete in-depth internet searches. We'll attempt to do that as we're screening candidates. We'll look for people who've had issues and try to alert you to that, but we're not perfect. The internet's a pretty big place. So there is the search firm will also duplicate that of either your top candidate or your top 3 candidates, depending on what you wish. So basically, we believe that why you should hire us is because we're basically research driven based on best practices. We have very meaningful stakeholder engagement. I don't think it's ever happened that people have felt that they weren't listened to by the time we finish with the focus groups, by the time we get the surveys, and by the time we give you a final presentation of what we've heard from your constituents. We identify your needs. We recruit across the country. We can get confidential, hard to obtain information. Maybe we don't know someone who's applying, but the chances are we know someone who knows them or can tell us something confidentially about them. The professional office and all kinds of other support we can provide, particularly through EQUIP. So our strengths are our people, our process that's research-based and very community and constituent focused, and our commitment. We've done this over and over again, and we've had a very strong track record, as you see in the bottom part of the slide. All right, how did I do?
Yeah.
All right, okay, 22 minutes. I was 2 minutes long. There we go. All right, and now I'm here for your questions. That's the fun part.
Dr. Lees, during the interview phase, do you help the board develop the questions?
Absolutely. When we do the planning session with you, we'll give you a notebook. It's your Bible that will follow the practice. In that, we will give you pages and pages of sample questions, but that's really not what we use. Basically, once we've done your leadership profile, we will use the things that what we call your key characteristics. We encourage boards that they should fit on one page so that there's not a massive list, because everybody wants God in the next superintendent, okay? But the reality is you're not going to get that person. She's not available probably to come here. So the reality is that there's certain things you're focused on. So we will draft a set of questions. Well, actually we'll do 2 things. First of all, we'll ask you for your questions. Sometimes we get really great questions, and sometimes we get great questions that need to be tweaked a little bit, because we'll make sure that you're all in legal compliance and those kinds of things. We'll take your questions, we'll look at the key things. Maybe as a group you forgot about a finance question or whatever, so we'll add to it and we'll bring back a proposal. So the first planning meeting is about 2 hours. The session where we present candidates and develop the script of the first interview, which is a structured interview, that's 2 to 2.5 hours. You then do your interviews, and then in the second round, that's basically open-ended. We encourage you to ask whatever questions you want, because then those questions become candidate focused. Why did you move from this job to that job? Why did you do that? How would you, your background in curriculum maybe isn't as strong as I would have liked. How would you approach that in this district, or whatever the issue might be?
And do you facilitate us debriefing too?
Oh, absolutely. We should. Yes, thank you. I want to make that clear. Basically, I offer to be here if you want me to be here for the first and the second round. But in any event, we will be here at the end after your last candidate. And basically, we have some processes. You, again, get a choice because this is your search. But we have some processes to identify who to vote off the island, and then who to finally, in the second round, who to select as your superintendent. So we have some processes to do that, and we facilitate that. And sometimes, boards adjourn and need to think about it and whatever, and we'll follow that process. That's one of the ways in particular that searches get different, because sometimes it's really easy, but our job is to make it hard. Our job is to make it very difficult for you to choose which of these several people is the right person.
Since 2000, you've placed 328, so that's about 21, 22 per year.
Uh-huh.
Is that about your run rate now in terms of placement?
Yeah, it's been a fairly busy year, and our firm is a little more involved in some very high visibility. We did Los Angeles. We just got selected for Houston. The previous firm was fired, and they selected us in terms of that. So we've got some very the differences in the year are whether we've got some really high profile school systems, but that's fairly typical.
And how many employees are involved in those searches on an annual basis? How many full-time employees do you have?
Oh, full-time employees, there's probably only 3 or 4 full-time employees. Most of the rest of us that do the searches are doing it on a consultant basis, on a fee for work kind of basis, et cetera.
And would we expect to work with you on you and your associate, your Ohio associate?
Yes.
Exclusively?
Yes, we can, if you don't like either of us, we can switch that. But
if you didn't like either of you, you probably wouldn't be working.
Well, that's true. The only issue, and I was going to bring it up, so this is a perfect segue to bring it up, is I wasn't expecting to do a search when this one came along, and I couldn't say no. So I have a commitment in the middle of March for about 2 weeks. But other than that, I'm clear. But I am, in terms of the timetable, I would just offer to you, whether you choose this or not, I think it's critically important that you get started immediately. I would strongly recommend that you pick a search firm and start the process and do the planning session within the next 2 weeks. That would then set us up, if it happens to be us, that would set us up because you've got spring break in there and whatever. We could get the surveys out so that people could do them over spring break if they wanted to. We could do the focus groups right after spring break. April would be devoted to recruitment and presenting you the leadership profile at your April already scheduled board meeting. And May would be, hopefully you all don't have too many commitments in May. I would see May as the time that you would be the most time, the intensive time interviewing candidates. So the goal would be to have a superintendent identified by the end of May, certainly the first week in June, depending if you were going to do a site visit. That would allow someone, I don't know if you're going to ask, but I will just offer it anyway. There's been a lot of retirements in Ohio. And so the pool, some people say the pool is not as strong or as deep, perhaps. Not strong is not the wrong word, is the wrong word. Perhaps the pool is not as deep. I would think you would be nationally attractive, and we would work hard to make sure you have a national sample. What's tended to happen in the Ohio searches I've done, though, is people tend to know your district who are closer to your district. And so we get some really quality candidates that way. So it's hard to know what the balance is going to be between national candidates and local candidates. I can't tell you that going in. But obviously, we come to you and we honestly tell you, we think we've got a great pool, or we think we've got a strong pool, or we've got 4 very strong people and we're not sure about 2 or 3 of them, and then we work that through with you.
And so just to back up,
Sure.
Ideally, you'd like a decision from us by when?
Well, ideally, in terms of, and this is a little bit personally related, I'd like to have a decision in the planning meeting in the next 2 weeks by May 7th. So that we could get, that gives us the time to, March 7th. That gives us the time to get the groups identified, the letters sent out, so that right after spring break, the last days of March or the first day or 2 of April, we could have the focus groups. It takes a while for the district to get those letters out, get the people invited, make sure they didn't overlook anyone, et cetera. And spring break is right in the middle of that time too.
Okay.
What else?
Any other questions?
Okay,
You've
all right,
left us
all right.
speechless.
Thank you very
Doesn't
much.
happen
It was
often.
a pleasure.
Thank
It
you
was a
so
pleasure meeting
much.
you all. And whatever your final decision, I hope your search goes extremely well. Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Is there, oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Is there interest in discussion, or do you need some time to think, or how would you like to proceed?
I think we're gonna need to meet before our next scheduled board meeting. I just don't want to lose a lot of time on this. I know that might be difficult, but I do feel like we're in a critical window right now to get moving, and I just don't want to lose a lot of time. We're not going to get a lot more information between now in the next board meeting, certainly everyone can submit questions. And I will, get them answered as quickly as possible, but we kind of have the information now. So I think even if we just call a short meeting before that mid-March one to get this going, I would appreciate that, just to keep it moving.
Okay by me?
That's okay? Good.
Let's get it done.
Okay, well, then we will
Work on
try
calendars.
and work on calendars. It's always so much fun. But I think it's a good idea because, John, I don't think you're going to be here on the 14th of March anyway.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to attend.
Yeah, so I think that would be good if we can get that wrapped up. Okay, well, we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the work that you guys have done,
Debbie.
Mrs. Kalinowski and Mr. Darrow. So things are moving right ahead.
Okay, thank you. My pleasure to introduce Chris Fuller, our play update.
Geez. Okay. I
Thanks
too am
for
a
being
fast talker
excited.
and have a lot of energy, so I clearly could not wait to be called. So I apologize for that. Geez. So, dear board members, I sincerely thank you all for giving me the opportunity on behalf of all the New Albany teachers, a few moments to highlight some of the remarkable goings on in the district at this time of year amongst both our teaching staff and of course our astonishing students. As you can see on the document that I put at each of your places, we have nearly 20 kudos for this meeting, covering students and staff in every building across the campus. Of course, I'm not going to take the time to read all 20 kudos. But I nonetheless urge you to please take the time to read through all these exciting new things going on in our district. As you'll see, the talents of our students and teachers serve not only our community, but they serve local universities, the greater Columbus community at large, and they serve our colleagues across the entire state through professional development opportunities, which is pretty commendable. So I'd like to at least take a few minutes to talk about the significance of just a few of the noteworthy things that our teachers and students have been up to during these winter months. Firstly, I'd like to applaud my colleagues at the high school, Lynette Turner, John Dawson, Christine Chamberlain, Eric Carmichael, Juliet Montague, and Rachel Braswell for their continued collaboration with the professors of Kenyon College as they work to revise and in certain cases add dual enrollment classes for our high school students in partnership with Kenyon College. As the state and local districts continue to explore more avenues by which to give opportunities for high school students to receive college credit, longstanding partnerships like the ones that we have with Kenyon College are crucial in providing innovative educational options for our kids. So I really congratulate my colleagues and especially the students in these very rigorous classes for their ongoing efforts and success in those endeavors. Likewise, I'd like to point out that the efforts of high school science teacher Lauren Love and her progress in developing curriculum for the high school biomedical science program. Lauren recently attended training through the University of South Carolina in order to, as I'd said, develop the curriculum for medical intervention and biological innovation courses for the next few years in this program. If the school board chooses to pursue the certification of this very unique science program that we're doing at the high school, I think you'll find that the results of these endeavors are very, very beneficial to our students. My classroom is right across from Lawrence, and so it's really fun for me to see her and all of our students walking around the hallways in scrubs and goggles and latex gloves and things like that as they try and solve this fictitious death that's going on upstairs above us. There's a crime scene laid out, and they're analyzing different pieces of evidence and things like that. So it's really cool. And the kids, of course, the students that I have who are in this class, they absolutely love it. And they know it's such a meaningful program for them, as many of them hope to pursue a future career in the applied sciences. On February 9th, two teachers from our 1-8 building, Tara Frederick and Kate Toma, presented at the Ohio Educational Technology Conference, where they shared with teachers from across the state about explicitly teaching their elementary students the so-called 4 C's. Critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication through things such as Genius Hours, Code Academy, and Maker Spaces. I would need an easel and markers and things like that to explain exactly what these programs entail. But suffice it to say, our teachers have been integrating tools from IDEO, which is a technology firm, Stanford's Design Thinking Framework, Google Classroom, and a website called code.org regularly into their classroom. These are innovative tools in education, and they're the future of our education. And so the fact that it's our teachers from New Albany who are teaching other teachers from Ohio in districts from all over is really quite remarkable. At our middle school, the SLC, so the Small Learning Community number 3, was able to raise close to $350 for the Flint water crisis over a 3-day Valentine Graham sale. It's important to point out that it was the students who had the idea, and truly the teachers stepped back and just had a help in the organization of the event. The money will go to the Flint Child and Health and Development Fund through the Community Foundation of Greater Flint, Michigan. Our students were most concerned with specifically children who have to deal with the long-term effects of lead contamination in water, and this fund focuses just on that. So if we consider that one of the tenets of our district is to support a globally minded citizen, then I think this is a perfect manifestation of that, and I think the students absolutely need to be applauded for that. Lastly, and again, this is just one out of, as you can see, a very long list of kudos. But our middle school choir directors, Kim Hurst and Chelsea Laschelder, took 60 middle school students to the Columbus Children's Choir Honor Festival on February 6th, where our students rehearsed and had a choir performance with an international composer named Cynthia Gray. This is the 3rd year that our students have attended this festival. Our arts are a cornerstone of this school. They're one of our proudest achievements of our schools as a community. And yet again, here's an example of our students out there representing us, and in the words of Mr. Carter, our New Albany brand. And that's something that we should certainly be proud of. So all of that to say that every day in our schools, there are incredible things going on. And if it's been a while since you've had a chance to make your way through the buildings and pop into classrooms, I strongly urge you to do so, because they're really remarkable things that I think would make you very proud of our students. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a great report.
Thank you.
I'm sure Chris could go on and on. He could give you the floor for an hour, and there would still not be enough time to talk about all the great work going on in our classrooms. I don't know if we have an OPSI update this evening. Is anyone here from OPSI? Okay. That concludes superintendent and items.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to discussion items. We have 2 board discussion items this evening. The first is board liaison reports. Do we have a report or 2 this evening?
I have a quick PTO update. I'll try to keep it moving. Our PTOs have been super busy over the last couple months. They have been hosting a lot of outstanding fundraising events. This weekend was the middle school Eagles Got Talent show, and they had another terrific year, almost a complete sellout, only a few tickets left. The 2-8 PTO or elementary school PTO hosted a family pancake breakfast on Saturday that was open to all district families. The high school PTO held its winter formal dance, and all of these are fundraisers that put money back into our schools. We also hosted 2 coffees this past month or several weeks. And you, Dr. Dominy, referred to some of the topics that came up. The elementary school coffee was hosted by 2 principals, Jen Denny and Teresa Smith. And then the middle school coffee was hosted by Elizabeth Gonda, and got a lot of great feedback on these coffees. People liked the format, and they would really like us to continue to offer coffees like this that are informal, where people can come and ask questions and give some feedback. I will quickly just share some of the common themes from both of the coffees. Folks brought up that they would like us to look at the standards across the SLCs to ensure consistency for all children. As this was a new year for us with SLCs, there's some differences between the way that each SLC feels to kids. So they would like us to just take a look at that. And as you mentioned, look at new ways to utilize the 2-8 building so that all children have an opportunity to experience it. There was some mention in terms of the way that we're structured right now, that the kids in the 2-5 building can feel a little excluded. as well as in the middle school, the SLC3, where the children are in the new building, they can feel a little excluded. So it's all kind of a work in progress, and it's great to get that feedback so that we can continue to refine our structure and incorporate all of the feedback into our thinking. There's a general consensus that parents are hoping that each grade can eat together next year, have lunch together. And I know that we've been working on trying to make that happen so that they can see their friends who are not in their SLC. And related to communication, just a general desire to continue to work to engage the entire community, to help people stay involved and informed, and for us not to just target small subsets of the community. We need to bring the community to get together to try to support the schools. And folks would like us to try to tap into volunteers in the community that may be parent volunteers, or even I know we're getting some interest from retirees to come in and volunteer, and they're a terrific resource. So we got some wonderful feedback from the coffees, and I think they are a great venue and forum for parents to engage and to provide us with feedback and get some questions answered. And our PTO leadership team has been doing a phenomenal job of providing events for fundraisers, providing events for the kids, as well as opportunities like this for parents to come in and ask questions. Our next PTO leadership meeting is in March, where Dr. Dominy and I will get together with all the PTO leaders and talk about upcoming events, and we will certainly discuss offering more principal coffees as well.
Great. I have just a very brief financial review and reporting committee report. We discussed the fact that we actually have two openings on the committee now. One of our most faithful members, Mr. Parag Patel, has had to resign from the board, and Mr. Darrow, who used to be a community member, is now a board member, and he is actually going to be chairing the committee in the future. So
I'm still a community member.
yes, you are, as we all are. So we had a discussion with the people who were there about the size of the committee, the role of the committee, and those discussions will move forward. But assuming that we want to maintain the size of the committee, the board will have to be making some movement towards replacing key members there. We also talked about the actual financial reports, which Ms. Jenkins actually sent out to us, and we have reviewed in advance of this meeting. I'm sure that if there are any questions about that, she will be happy to answer them as we move through that. And then we talked about Dr. Dominy's resignation, and received some very good feedback from that group in terms of what they thought we should keep in mind as we move through the process to identify and hire the next superintendent. So our last topic of conversation was the FY17 staffing plan that Dr. Dominy talked about earlier this evening. And that was pretty much the meeting. So that is my report. That brings us to the second reading of several board policies. Mr. Sawyer, is there anything you would like to say, or?
No.
Short answers that are the night.
That's yeah, best presentation so far.
Do you have any questions? We
Are there any
presented them in
questions?
December, we reviewed them in
Yeah.
January.
Yeah, we've all had ample time to consider them, and I think we're willing and able and ready to move forward with that. So that brings us to public participation. Do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening? Thank you. Kristen Hollenbach.
Good evening.
Hi, Kristen.
It's Kirsten
Oh,
Hollenbaugh.
I know that. Sorry about that.
It's 5075 Notting Hill Drive is my address, and I was encouraged to speak this evening. Debbie encouraged me to speak this evening. Thank you for letting me be here this evening. I'm addressing the board this evening because I would like to respectfully suggest that the board consider making the 2-8 learning facility a 5th, 6th grade building for the future school years. After being persuaded that a new building was critical due to the immediate growth of our community, I was surprised at how long the building remained undefined. During the construction process, I attended most of the new building tours, and it was then that I began to believe that it was best suited for a 5-6 building. After attending board meetings and learning about the student distribution plan for the building, once fully operational, I crunched some numbers and determined that the best way to channel the largest percentage of the taxpayer students through the building would be to make it a 5-6 building. My logic was not solely based on satisfying the majority of taxpayers and making sure the largest portion of students could have the full experience of the new building. In fact, I found a study conducted by Duke University that supports my beliefs on why a 5-6 building would be beneficial to our students and community. The study was actually done to determine if 6th graders should remain in elementary school or pushed forward to middle school. The study supported that, number one, 6th graders left in elementary school are less likely to have discipline behavior problems. It has also been determined that the positive behavior carries through to high school. It is, number two, it is beneficial for a 6th grader to have another year of maturity before being exposed to older adolescents. It has been determined that the maturity gap between a 6th and 7th grader is much larger than the maturity gap between a 7th and 8th grader. Number three, the 6th graders left in elementary school tested higher than their peers in the middle school on year-end standardized tests. Number four, many parents and teachers believe that 6th graders perform better in a smaller, more nurturing setting with fewer classmates and more one-on-one contact with the teacher. There were a few aspects the study found that were in favor of integrating 6th graders into middle school, and I would be remiss if I did not mention them. 6th graders in middle school have a greater access to extracurricular activities. I can only speak from an athletic standpoint, but I do know you cannot participate in athletic sports until you're in 7th grade. Allows it, number two, they said that the integrating them into middle school allows for independence. What is great about having a 5-6 building is it allows for independence, giving the best of both worlds scenario. Number three, middle schools might offer innovative programs. The example it gave was that a middle school actually here in Ohio accepted 25 students into a program that allowed them to learn at their own pace. I am unaware of any such programs at our middle school. In looking at the top 10 school districts, according to niche.com, New Albany is the only district with a 2-8 building. We would not be the only district with a 5-6 building. You may be thinking, okay, she's pleaded the case for 6th graders, but why put 5th graders in that building? Well, it is the 2-5 that was congested, but it just so happens that a study has been done right here in New Albany that would support putting 5th graders in the new building in their own little pod on one little side. And you might call the study the 5th grade annex project. For years, our 5th graders were placed in the annex, the oldest, most traditional school on campus. If you pulled together a focus group of students who attended the annex and parents of students who attended the annex, the overwhelming feedback you would receive would be that it was the best year the child has experienced so far.
You have 1 minute.
I have
1 minute.
1 minute. A year and a half ago, when my 5th grader got her placement, she was in the new building. She cried when she found out that she wasn't going to be in the annex because that was the reputation that it had, that it was a community. And I thought about displacing teachers. I'm empathetic to that, but I really truly believe that it is the best option for the students. And I think the teachers, at least that I've had the honor of knowing, would rise to the occasion and be willing to accept a 5-6 building. So thank you. And I would love the opportunity to discuss this with you further. I'm willing to make available my time, like you're making of your time, to work through this. So I appreciate that.
Send us your, do you have it all written down?
I do. I will send it to
Yeah.
whoever.
If you send it to me,
Sure.
then I will make certain that everyone gets it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and that takes us to our consent agenda items. And because this evening is a little bit unusual, at least in terms of the first action item, I want to take the consent agenda, if I could, please, in 3 parts. So I'd like to first ask for a motion for item 8A1.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. This action item actually is the formal acceptance on the part of the board of the resignation of Dr. Dominy. And I just wanted to take a few moments and talk about what that means and what April has meant to us all here in the district. She used the word bittersweet earlier tonight to talk about it. And it's so funny because that's the first word I wrote down here on my notes. I think we all recognize the wonderful professional and personal opportunity she's moving towards, but it must be noted that we will miss her visionary and compassionate leadership. There are some who may not actually know that April was actually hired by the board 5 years ago because the board, the teachers, the administrators, and the community members who were involved in the search felt that she was the leader most qualified to implement the community's strategic plan for our schools. And in that regard, Dr. Dominy did not disappoint. In the first few months she was here, she convened a group to help define our actual mission statement, and she obtained funding to conduct a national study and visitation of exemplary school districts to benchmark New Albany against some of the highest performing school districts in the country. Now, I wanted to share a few highlights of the progress that have been made here in New Albany under Dr. Dominy's leadership. First of all, in terms of academics, in the past 5 years, we've seen a 240% increase in the number of students taking AP classes. In the 2014-15 school year, there were 17 AP classes offered. We saw our students earn 143 scholar awards and 14 national scholars. 5 years ago, when I was on the board, I think the number was maybe 1 or 2 national scholars. So that's a huge jump. She also, working with staff, initiated the College Credit Plus program using a $1.1 million grant that has allowed our students to earn college credit while they're still in high school. She's championed acceleration opportunities. Right now, there are 10 high school classes available to middle school students, and she realigned the math program, working with others in her cabinet and in the school buildings to move students along at a more accelerated pace so that they will have more access to the advanced math classes by the time they get into high school. We have 13 blended learning course offerings, and blended learning, as you know, combines online instruction with hands-on instruction from a teacher in the classroom. That innovative programming was funded largely through a grant received 3 years ago from eTech Ohio. We were rated in Newsweek's top high schools. We're rated 4th in Central Ohio, 21st in the state, and we weren't even mentioned 5 years ago. Under April's leadership, we've seen a focus on enhanced reading and writing literacy instruction in the lower grades. 100% of our third graders have passed the third grade reading guarantee every year. The school district is rated an A, and 26 of 26 indicators were reached. But it wasn't just academics that April's leadership influenced. She has also influenced and impacted the development of each and every child in other areas. And she would be the first to tell you that this was not individual effort. It was through a collaborative process with teachers and with building administrators and central office administrators and parents and students themselves. But we now have a house system that didn't exist when April arrived. We have more than 77 clubs. We have many more leadership opportunities for our students, and almost 100% of our high school students are involved in one or more activities. Due to a series of very tragic and difficult events with some students in the district, we've seen expanded mental health supports. Due to April's leadership, we are now working with Children's Hospital and Adam H., and she secured grant funding to pay for 2 full-time mental health specialists through Concord Counseling. We have 3 times the number of students participating in international and domestic expedition learning than we did 4 years ago, and that's happening at absolutely no cost to the district. And again, we continue our record with Ralph Young Awards for athletic success, as we have. I believe we've won the award for all 5 or 6 years now. So in terms of financial accomplishments, in the past 5 years, we've been able to save from budgeted expenses almost $12 million, thanks in part to the relationship that April has forged with teacher leadership and also the leadership of the classified unions. She's led that partnership and that work. And I know that the board has been very grateful to both April and our partners as well. And then the total new grant funding has reached $3 million. So that's money that taxpayers do not have to provide for us. That's allowed us to do all kinds of special programming. That money really was not available 5 years ago. In terms of bricks and mortar, I appreciate Kirsten's remarks this evening, because really the K-12 learning facility is a remarkable achievement. And it's interesting to note that it was passed and funded and built after 2 previous ballot failures. So I think that that in itself, that 1,200 students for grades 2 through 8 right now, with flexible space that we can use to accommodate any grade level, that was designed from the program up. So rather than design a building and then try and put the program in place within the building, it was really a unique and exciting way to plan that building, trying to figure out what's the work that needs to be done in the building, how do students work best, and then let's design a building that costs no more than a traditional school building that really will complement and support student work. So I think that we have to recognize a rich and varied body of work, and we are very appreciative. Dr. Dominy will continue to work through the end of her contract year in July, so there'll be many more opportunities, I think, to celebrate her contributions to our schools and the community. But on behalf of the board and on behalf of myself in particular, I just wanted to let you know that your work has been valuable, has made a lasting imprint, and will be impacting the lives of children for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Before you vote, I have to go on the record and say, none of those things are due to me. But thanks very much for saying that. I mean, everything that we've accomplished has been because of our staff and our community and our parents. So I'm glad that I had a chance to be part of it.
All right, I take it all back.
Yes.
So could we have a roll call vote on that, unless anybody else has anything to say?
You did a good job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Yes.
Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff,
Yes.
Vice President McClellan,
Yes.
President Kohler.
Yes. That brings us to the treasurer's items for action. Could I have a motion, please, for items B1 through 3? Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Second, please.
Okay. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Darrow. We've all had an opportunity to read through these. I know several of us have asked additional questions. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add, or if you just like to check and see if there are
If there are any additional
further
questions,
questions. Anything else you'd like to?
So that I'm clear, is that Rotary Special Services, that's the Eagles Nest, this,
Yes, the Eagle Summer Day Camp.
okay. So we're approving an additional $200,000 tonight?
That is correct.
Okay.
That was not budgeted. Actually, the day camp wasn't planned when we did the budget. That's actually just been developed. And so because it wasn't budgeted, we have to increase for that cost.
Okay.
Those are all covered by fees. They are paid at least 10 days prior to the camp start, so that we will have the money to fund the camp through the summer. Those are not taxpayer dollars. None of this is general fund money.
And then we feel good that the demand is there to be able to cover these costs, and we're not, presumably, if we don't have the demand, we might end up incurring taxpayer dollars.
If we don't have the demand, some of the programming, I sent out some information, and Mr. Sawyers can speak more to it. We did a a community survey to see what the demand would be. And then there are also some programming items that would not happen if we didn't have the funds to pay those through the fees.
Okay, thank you.
So to be clear, there are a series of checks and balances so that if the level of participation is not sufficient, that there will be no general fund cost to this increase.
That is correct.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Vice President McClellan,
Yes.
Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
President Kohler.
Yes, and that motion carries. The last grouping for the consent agenda items are the superintendent's personnel actions, items for action, and that would be C1 through D8, I think. C1 through D8. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Dominy?
There are many standard staff items and trip items here, so I welcome any questions the board may have.
The question is, are these essentially perfunctory insofar as their contract? I mean, it just is what it is, right? There isn't much of a discussion or debate. This is all handled. The discussion and debate all occurs when the contract is negotiated. And so these things just follow.
That's
You bring
correct.
them to the board because all these items have to be approved by the board.
Yes, that is correct.
Are there other questions? Hearing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Vice President McClellan,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff,
Yes.
Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
President Kohler.
Yes, and that motion carries as well. And we have one more opportunity for public participation. And we have no one else signed up to speak this evening. So that brings us to adjournment. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalinowski.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Darrow. And could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Vice President McClellan?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries and we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.